I'm quite excited to share with you an idea, concept that's been with me for a number of years. And I hope you can see a lot of the things that you've tried in your schools and your classrooms within what I'm going to be talking about. And it's around creating a continuous innovation web of connecting students, educators, to make sure that they're connected and they're value added in their learning. First, I want to talk about some experience that have really helped shape this idea for me, and some key learning experiences. First was a long time ago as an officer cadet in the Canadian Armed Forces, where I learned a lot about teamwork and what really good leadership looks like. The second experience is I spent about 3 years at Toyota at the plant in Cambridge, first as a welding team member and then as a quality control engineering specialist, where I was really able to get a deep understanding of the Toyota way, their idea of system thinking, and as well their culture of Kaizen, which is continuous improvement and problem solving. And then the last experience is the one I'm still in right now with the Waterloo Region District School Board, first starting as a science teacher, and then a department head, and then as an administrator from JK to grade 12 schools. And I'm continuing to learn a lot about change and about learning there. So as we were talking about tonight, this idea of fostering connectivity, I think there's some key questions to ask first. The first is, why do we need to connect? The second question is, how are we going to do it? How do we connect with our students, with educators, with people around the world? And then how do we know we're doing it right? And then the last question is, well, what's it going to look like when we're connecting well? So if we look at first why to connect, you need to understand what's your need to connect. And then understand you need to be open and vulnerable when you do that. Because if you consider our students, we've got a vision as educators, we've got a vision for our students, goals that we want for them. We need to be clear, that's why we're connecting, because we want to help achieve that vision. And then when we talk about how to connect, we need to first of all think about the culture, right? We need to create that culture that allows and nurtures connectivity. And it also needs to be really easy to learn and integrate, to use that kind of connectivity. An example of a culture we've developed at Park Manor that works really well just for our school, but really can help us when we think about what a good connection is for our students. First, it needs to be fun. Students need to be engaged and eager to connect, right? They need to be innovative and take risks, because connecting with someone and saying you need to learn something is a risk. I don't know how to do this. How can we develop this? And you need to be respectful, because you're going to come across ideas, points of view that you might not agree with at first. They might not agree with yours, so you need to be respectful as you're working together. Oh, sorry. And then the last one, always looking to pursue excellence, right? Always trying to do your best in what you do. Another key culture that I find is really important in terms of connecting is this idea of continuous innovation. And I use innovation instead of improvement, because I find in Toyota they talked about continuous improvement, but I find in education it has a bit of a deficiency kind of feel to it, like you're not doing a good enough job. And in today's world, in education and what our students need to know is changing every day. So we need to be continuously innovating in order to keep up, so that we're actually giving our students the skills and knowledge they need. So if you think of the idea as you learn something, right, then you integrate that into your practice, and you learn something else, you integrate that into your practice, and all the time you're adding value to your own learning, if you're looking at yourself, or adding value to your students' learning. And then when we talk about how is connecting adding value, you need to always think about in the context of your learning. Remember, we talked about the idea of what's your vision. If a student learns something that brings them closer to achieving the vision, brings them closer to a goal, we call that value added. So that's what we want to try and do. So as we're looking at an activity, it's value added if it really helps student learning. If it ends up wasting time, it's hard to do, then we call that waste. So you're always trying to add value and reduce waste. And then in terms of what does connecting look like, it's all about building learning relationships. And it is all about relationships. And I think it's important that we always start face-to-face first and use video. And then you can use your digital spaces, because it's a great way to share ideas, media. And then the other thing is to consider that your connections need to be flexible and dynamic, because they're going to change, and different connections will will work differently. And when I talk about connecting to learn, I kind of think of two different ways. There's the idea of sharing to learn new ideas, concepts, points of view, and so much of my learning has happened this way. And then the second part is to collaborate to create innovative new ideas, concepts, points of view, or solve some of these really complex problems. And I found through collaboration and connecting, that's where you really create the really unique ideas that can help get you to a goal. And this idea of this continuous innovation web, I think of 5 key ways that you can connect, and that's what I'm going to review now that can really help. And when we talk about connected learning webs, we always have to start with students. They're our learners, they're the base, they're why we're in education, right? And we know we have educators, they're our primary influencers of student learning. They're the ones that can make the most difference because they create that culture in the classroom. And then we have our administrators, the second most important, because we create that culture in the school. We support our students, we support our teachers. And then you have board and system personnel that support all of us in doing our work. And when we think of the first type of connection I want to talk about, it's a horizontal connection, and I call it an intra-horizontal connection because it's really between two schools. Just imagine these two pyramids here are two schools. We're talking about students first connecting to each other, maybe in a classroom, they're collaborating, they're doing some type of team group activity, and then in our classrooms or schools, we have educators connecting, working together. Maybe they're doing moderated marking, maybe they're co-planning a learning cycle. Administrators connecting to talk about how they're moving change in their schools. And obviously board personnel connecting horizontally. It's really important. These are ones that we use quite a bit. But then there's the other horizontal connection, which is the idea of so between schools, between boards, between systems across the world, right? So you can have students connecting with each other, educators, administrators, and board personnel. And I've personally had lots of connections that way, and they're unique and they're really powerful. I now like to look at vertical connections. These are probably the most important in terms of changing an organization. First, you look at the different connections students can make with their teachers, which is the most important, with administrators. And again, this connection is two-way. And then, you can see these vertical connections here. Within a system, this is how a system is a learning organization because everyone's connected down to the students. Because the more we understand their learning and then understand what teachers need to support their learning, the better we're able to support them. And then we can look at vertical connections, intervertical connections between maybe two schools, maybe two school boards. And I've also found this very beneficial. So there's no real tiers. You can connect with anybody out there, and it's important you don't feel you need to just connect with your peers. And then the last type of connection that I'd like to talk about is, I call it the local to global connection, which is where you're thinking of all the connections outside of education. And this is probably the most powerful now with today's connected age, where we look at students connecting anywhere. This could be like students connecting with Chris Hadfield in the International Space Station. That's incredible to be able to have that connection. Educators connecting anywhere over the world. I was able to connect with a director in Australia and talk about what they're trying to do in terms of moving to 21st century schools. And you learn so much from all these different connections. So if I put them all together and you look at the various connections you have, it's unlimited possibilities. And when you think of all the connections you might have in your school and your classrooms, they're one of these types. But it's really unlimited when you look at the different things you can do. So just remember, always think of why you're connecting, what's your vision, what's your goal for your students, for yourself, for your school system. Look at creating that web of connections, trying to find different people, because you never know where you're going to end up. You make a connection with one person that can lead you to another person, and you've got some great ideas, right? Always look at, your filter should be, does it add value? Is it taking me where I want to go? Because there's been lots of things at Park Manor we've stopped because it wasn't value added. And we moved on and used those things that were value added. And always think of that culture of continuous innovation. And like I said, there's been a number of times you start connecting with one person. At an area meeting, I connected with a professor at OISE who connected me with another professor who's connected me to other places, and we've had people come to the school and made those connections, and I've learned so much by sharing, by their questions, by seeing what they're doing in their schools. And this is just a really simple web. And all our students, the more we connect them, the better their learning webs are going to be, because they're not just limited to the teacher. They're all over the place. And I want you to think of this idea, too, as an upward spiral in learning. So remember, we talk about you've got your vision, right? You go and you make your learning web. You've got all your connections, your learning stuff, and you've got that culture of continuous innovation where you learn something, you integrate it, you're adding value. And then you go back to your vision. It might be a new goal now, or your vision's adjusted because of all your connections. And then you're going to slowly spiral up. And that's what we want. It's always thinking of a cycle and always looking at those connections. So if I think of my dream for this idea, is you've got your vision, always look for ways that add value to it. Try and build that connection web all over the place, right? Have that culture of continuous innovation. First to change yourself, to help change your school system, your school, your students, and then ultimately the world. Thank you very much.